Hello and welcome to Food Safety Fridays, edition 112. My name is Simon Timperley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. It's good to have you along here today for this session, which is implementing a BRC compliant Issue 8 food safety management system, and that will be with our very own Tony Connor. Already some of you regulars, type in the sidebar. Check in, tell us where you're located, say hello. It's not always nice to hear from you. Just to say, this program, the Food Safety Fridays webinar program, is sponsored by Trace Analytics, Metla Toledo, DNV, GL Business Assurance, AIB International, and Safe Food 360. These kind of organizations support us in bringing you this regular short training sessions. Just to say, it is being recorded today, so if you do miss some or get distracted or have a bit of an outage or something, don't worry. Afterwards we'll follow up with an email with the recording, the slides and the certificate of attendance. Okay, I'd like to introduce you now to Tony, our guest presenter, Tony Connor. Are you there, Tony?
Hi Simon, hi everybody. Yeah, I'm here.
Hello again, Tony. How are you? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Raring to go?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. If you want to get your slides ready then, Tony, I'll tell the audience what we've got coming up in the near future. You can see in the sidebar, I have actually meant to load this. No, I didn't. Sorry. Sorry. I am loading the upcoming training on February the 15th, Practical Supplier Auditor Training with Vladimir Sachinsky. $97. It's a 4-hour training course. You get lots of good templates and documents and advice from Vladimir on developing a supplier approval and monitoring program and improving it as well. So yeah, check that out, click find out more. I'll be back for the Q&A later, and for now I'll hand you over to Tony.
Hi, so welcome to this presentation on implementing a BRC Global Standard for Food Safety Issue 8 compliant food safety management system. The standard requires compliance in 4 key areas: senior management commitment, a HACCP food safety plan, a quality management system, and prerequisite programs. The first 7 sections in Issue 8 are the same as Issue 7, but there are 2 additional sections in Issue 8. The requirements for high risk, high care and ambient high care production risk zones have been moved to Section 8. And Section 9, requirements for traded products, was a separate voluntary module in Issue 7. The requirements in Sections 1 to 7 are applied to all operations. Sites with product high risk, high care or ambient high care facilities must meet requirements in Section 8. Where a site also handles traded products, there are additional requirements for these products as detailed in Section 9. The requirements for high risk, high care and ambient high care areas remain largely unchanged from Issue 7 to Issue 8, but are in Section 8. A warning about the standard here. A familiar theme in Issue 8 of the standard is a requirement for risk assessments. There are at least 50 requirements to carry out assessments. Changes in Issue 8 have included the plan for a development of a product safety culture, enhanced requirements for environmental monitoring, Additional requirements for food defence. Enhanced product packing and labelling controls. Implementing the BRC standard will usually involve the following steps. Learn about the BRC Global Standard for Food Safety. Senior Management Implementation. Implementation of Good Manufacturing Practices. Implementation of a Food Safety Quality Management System. Food Safety Plan / HACCP implementation and training. Product and process controls, training, internal audits, management reviews, self-assessment, and then a certification audit. The requirements deemed fundamental are the same in Issue 8 and are highlighted as we go through. The key requirements of Section 1.1, Senior Management Commitment and Continual Improvement. There's a requirement for documented policy to produce safe, legal and authentic products to the specified quality. Requirement for food safety and quality culture, documented food safety objectives, senior management review, meeting program, confidential reporting system, requirement for adequate human and financial resources, and to be informed of all relevant legislative and scientific information. Changes in Section 1 including adding authentic to policy requirements, management review meetings to review objectives that have not been met, and for employees to report any evidence of unsafe or out of specification product or raw materials. Senior management commitment, fundamental requirement. Senior management need to demonstrate they are fully committed to the implementation of the food safety and quality management system, meeting the requirements of the BRC Global Standard for Food Safety, and driving continual improvement. There should be a documented policy to produce safe, legal and authentic products to the specified quality. New 1.1.2 Food Safety and Quality Culture. There needs to be a plan for the development of a product safety culture. For a food safety culture to flourish, the importance of food safety should be understood by all members of staff. It needs to be led by senior management to ensure the necessary commitment, support and resources are available. There should be defined activities, an action plan indicating how the activities will be undertaken and measured, and review. A wide range of activities could be incorporated into a culture development plan, some of which may already be conducted. For example, staff surveys, staff reviews, recognition programs such as Employee of the Month schemes, feedback mechanisms, training, review and staff development, teamwork, involving staff in setting objectives, effective communication strategies, etc. There should be documented food safety objectives. These should be smart and support the food safety policy. There are requirements for senior management review and a meeting program. 1.1.6 is new. The company shall have a confidential reporting system. The company shall have a confidential reporting system to enable staff to report concerns relating to product safety, integrity, quality, and legality. So Section 1 also includes human and financial resources and to be informed of all relevant legislative and scientific information. 1.2 covers organisational structure, responsibilities and management authority, including organisational chart and for employees to be aware of responsibilities. The company shall have a clear organisational structure and lines of communication to enable effective management of product safety, legality and quality. The site senior management shall ensure that all employees are aware of their responsibilities. Where documented work instructions exist for activities undertaken, the relevant employees shall have access to these and be able to demonstrate that work is carried out in accordance with the instructions. Section 2, the Food Safety Plan HACCP, a fundamental requirement. There must be an implemented and effective food safety plan incorporating the Codex Alimentarius HACCP principles. Section 2 includes requirements for the HACCP food safety team, and that team being a multidisciplinary food safety team, the scope, prescribe prerequisite programs, to describe the product, identify intended use, construct a process flow diagram, verify the flow diagram, list all potential hazards associated with each process step, conduct a hazard analysis, and consider any measures to control identified hazards. Determine the critical control points. Establish critical limits for each CCP. Establish a monitoring system for each CCP. Establish a corrective action plan. Establish verification procedures. Establish HACCP documentation and record keeping. And review the HACCP plan. So HACCP plan should include the process step, hazard, the control measure, critical limits, monitoring procedures, responsibilities, corrections and corrective action, and reference to relevant records. So, changes in the Food Safety Plan HACCP. There's a new additional requirement for the team leader to have training. Where there is a legal requirement for specific training, this should be in place. An example is the FSMA requiring a preventive controls qualified individual. Suitable training shall include the principles of the tool being used and be of sufficient duration. For example, BRC auditors are required to undertake a 2-day classroom-based HACCP course. Any format or delivery method of training is permitted, however the outcome should be a suitably trained individual capable of executing a HACCP or food safety plan as part of their team. There's an additional requirement for HACCP review if other relevant published information becomes known, for example, a recall of a similar product. Where appropriate, the changes shall also be reflected in the company's product safety policy and food safety objectives. Sites are not required to use the specific terminology of the standard. There are references to HACCP or food safety plan rather than HACCP plan and equivalent to Codex throughout Section 2. Issue 8 prescribes the type of hazard to be considered. So clearly the potential implications of the FSMA requirements have been considered in Issue 8. On to Section 3, Food Safety and Quality Management System. There are requirements for a Food Safety and Quality Manual, document control, record completion and maintenance, internal audits, supplier and raw material approval and performance monitoring, specifications, corrective and preventive actions, control of non-conforming product, traceability, complaint handling, management of incidents, product withdrawal and product recall. Food Safety and Quality Manual. The company's processes and procedures to meet the requirements of the standard shall be documented to allow consistent application, facilitate training, and support due diligence in the production of a safe product. The site's procedures, working methods, and practices shall be collated in the form of a printed or electronic quality manual. There are requirements for document control and record completion and maintenance. Where documents and records are stored in electronic form, these shall also be stored securely, for example, authorized access, control of amendments and password protected, and also backed up to prevent loss. 3.4 is internal audit and a fundamental requirement to verify the food safety plan and that systems meet the requirements of the standard. Changes in Section 3.4 include, as a minimum, the internal audit program will include at least 4 different audit dates spread throughout the year. This can be achieved using an internal audit planner, planning your audit frequency and dates based on the risks associated with the activity and previous audit performance. All activities shall be covered at least once per year. As a minimum, the scope of the internal audit program shall include the HACCP or Food Safety Plan, prerequisite programs, food defense and food fraud prevention plans, and procedures implemented to achieve the standard. Internal audit reports shall identify conformity as well as non-conformity and include objective evidence of the findings. On to Section 3.5, Supplier and Raw Material Approval and Performance Monitoring. There's a fundamental requirement for 3.5.1 Management of Suppliers of Raw Materials and Packaging. There are changes to the requirements for risk assessments of each raw material or group of raw materials. These should take into account allergen contamination, foreign body risks, microbiological contamination, chemical contamination, and a new addition is variety or species cross-contamination. You should consider substitution or fraud, and another addition, risks associated with raw materials which are subject to legislative control. There are also requirements for when the risk assessment should be updated. For example, a change in material or supplier, a new risk, following a recall related to a specified material, and every 3 years. There is also a new addition in 3.5.1.2. Supplier approval should be by a valid certification to the applicable BRC standard or GFSI benchmark standard. The scope of the certification shall include the raw materials purchased. Certificates used as evidence in the supplier approval process must be valid, and the accuracy of the information received from the supplier must be confirmed. For example, using the BRC directory, which can confirm the supplier's certification status and that the product scope includes the raw materials purchased by the site. Similarly for FSSC 22000. Or, approval can be by supplier audits with the scope to include product safety, traceability, hazard review and good manufacturing practice, but where this supplier audit is completed by a second or third party, there is a need to demonstrate the competency of the auditor and confirm that the scope of the audit includes product safety, traceability, hazard review, and good manufacturing practices, and obtain and review a copy of the full audit report. Also, where a valid risk-based justification is provided and the supplier is assessed as low risk only, a completed supplier questionnaire may be used for initial approval. There shall be a documented process for the ongoing review and monitoring of suppliers based on risk and using defined performance criteria. The approval or monitoring of suppliers of services and outsourced processes shall also be based on risk. Specifications. Specifications are required for raw materials, finished products, and any product or service that can affect finished product integrity. Specifications may be in the form of printed or electronic document or part of an online specification system. On to 3.7, Corrective and Preventive Actions. Fundamental requirement. The site shall be able to demonstrate that it uses information from identified failures in the food safety and quality management system to make necessary corrections and prevent recurrence. There's a new requirement, 3.7.3. The site shall have a procedure for completion of root cause analysis. At a minimum, root cause analysis shall be used to implement ongoing improvements and to prevent recurrence of non-conformities when analysis of non-conformities for trends shows that there has been a significant increase in the type of non-conformity, or a non-conformity places the safety, legality, or quality of a product at risk. BRC guidance prescribes the 5 whys technique. Section 3.8 covers the control of non-conforming product. 3.9 covers traceability and is fundamental. The site shall be able to trace all raw material product lots, including primary packaging, from its suppliers through all stages of processing and dispatch to its customers and vice versa. So it's a new clause 3.9.1 to ensure that sites have a formal traceability procedure. The traceability test shall include a summary of the documents that should be referenced during the traceability test and clearly show the links between them. Section 3.10 covers complaint handling. All complaints shall be recorded, investigated, and the results of the investigation of the issue recorded where sufficient information is provided. Complaint data shall be analysed for significant trends. Where there has been a significant increase in a complaint or a serious complaint, root cause analysis shall be used to implement ongoing improvements to product safety, legality, and quality, and to avoid recurrence. This analysis shall be made available to relevant staff. (3.11) Management of incidents, product withdrawal, and product recall. There is an amendment in this section to make it clear that the certification body should be contacted in the event of a significant food safety incident, not just a recall. Customer focus was removed in Issue 8 because it was particularly difficult to audit. On to Section 4, Site Standards. There are requirements for external standards, site security and food defense, layout, product flow and segregation, building fabric, utilities, equipment, maintenance and staff facilities, chemical and physical product contamination control, foreign body detection and removal equipment, housekeeping and hygiene, waste and waste disposal, management of surplus food and products for animal feed, pest management, storage facilities, dispatch and transport. External standards. There are requirements for local activities and site environment, for maintenance of external areas and maintenance of buildings. Product security and food defense. Issue 7 focused on site security, and it is now recognized that a wider food defense risk assessment is required. The new statement of intent prescribes that systems shall protect products, premises, and brands from malicious actions while under the control of the site. The company shall undertake a documented risk assessment (threat assessment) of the potential risk to products from any deliberate attempt to inflict contamination or damage. This threat assessment shall include both internal and external threats. The output from this assessment shall be a documented threat assessment plan. The plan shall be kept under review. Where raw materials or products are identified as being at a particular risk, the threat assessment plan shall include controls to mitigate these risks. Where prevention is not sufficient or possible, systems shall be in place to identify any tampering. Areas where a significant risk is identified shall be defined, monitored, and controlled. A visitor reporting recording system shall be in place. Staff shall be trained in site security procedures and food defense. On to Section 4.3, Layout, Product Flow and Segregation. Fundamental requirement. The factory layout, flow of processes, and movement of personnel shall be sufficient to prevent the risk of product contamination and to comply with relevant legislation. (4.4) covers building fabric in raw material handling, preparation, processing, packing, and storage areas. The fabric of site, buildings, and facilities should be applicable for its intended purpose. There are standards for walls, doors, floors, drainage, ceilings and overheads, elevated walkways, windows, lighting, ventilation, and extraction. 4.5 Utilities covers water, ice, air, and other gases. There are requirements for the water supply, for the water distribution system, and for monitoring of gases and steam. Section 4.6 Equipment. There are requirements for design and construction and food contact surfaces. 4.7 Maintenance. There are requirements for a maintenance schedule, equipment inspection, temporary repairs, clean up after maintenance work, use of food grade materials, and for management of engineering workshops. There were some additions in issue 8. Where temporary repairs are made, these shall be documented and controlled. There's some rewording. Excuse me. Equipment and machinery shall be inspected by an authorized member of staff to confirm the removal of contamination hazards before being accepted back into operation. Materials and parts used for equipment and planned maintenance shall be of an appropriate grade or quality. .8 Staff facilities. There are requirements for changing facilities, storage of personal items, segregation of personal items from work clothing, hand washing facilities, toilets, smoking areas, staff food, and catering facilities. On to 4.9, Chemical and Physical Product Contamination Control. There are requirements for chemical control, for the storage and handling of non-food chemicals, and the control of chemicals with strong scents and taints. Metal control. There are requirements to control sharp metal instruments, such as knives and blades, and also stationery, such as paper clips, staples, and other similar metallic items. There are specific requirements for control of glass, brittle plastic, ceramics, and similar materials. Wood should not be used in open product areas except where this is a process requirement. There are new requirements for other physical contaminants. Procedures shall be in place to prevent physical contamination of raw materials by raw material packaging, for example, when debagging or deboxing procedures are used to remove the packaging. Pens used in open product areas shall be controlled. .10 Foreign body detection and removal equipment. The risk of product contamination shall be reduced or eliminated by the effective use of equipment to remove or detect foreign bodies. A documented assessment to identify the potential use of equipment to detect or remove foreign body contamination. The HACCP analysis should be the starting point for implementing an effective foreign body control program. Potential hazards and the sources of those hazards must be identified so that appropriate control measures can be put in place to minimize the likelihood of product contamination. Typical equipment to be considered may include filters, sieves, metal detection, magnets, optical sorting equipment, X-ray detection equipment, and other physical separation equipment such as gravity separation or fluid bed technology. Metal detectors and X-ray equipment. Metal detection equipment shall be in place unless risk assessment demonstrates that this does not improve the protection of final products from metal contamination. Containers. Based on risk assessment, procedures shall be implemented to minimize foreign body contamination originating from the packaging container, for example, jars, cans, bottles, etc. This may include the use of covered conveyors, container inversion, and foreign body removal through rinsing or with water or air jets. Section 411 is Hygiene and Housekeeping. It is a fundamental requirement that housekeeping and cleaning systems shall be in place which ensure appropriate standards of hygiene are maintained at all times and the risk of product contamination is minimized. There are requirements for cleanliness of premises and equipment, documented cleaning procedures, cleaning performance limits, training and resources, cleaning inspection and sign-off, cleaning equipment, and cleaning in place, CIP. There is extensive rewording of 411.7 cleaning in place requirements. Also, limits of acceptable and unacceptable cleaning performance shall be defined for food contact surfaces and processing equipment. The site shall define the corrective action to be taken when monitored results are outside the acceptable limits. There's a new section 411.8, Environmental Monitoring. The use of monitoring techniques within the factory is an important tool for identifying the risk of potential product contamination with both pathogens and spoilage organisms. The requirements in Issue 8 have been extensively expanded. Where sites have production areas containing open products, there must be suitable monitoring of microorganisms in the factory environment that represent a risk to product. The design of the environmental monitoring program shall be based on risk and at a minimum include sampling protocol, identification of sample locations, frequency of tests, target organisms, test methods, recording and evaluation of results, appropriate control limits must be defined and the corrective action to be taken when monitored results indicate a failure to meet control limit or when monitored results indicate an upward trend of positive results. There is a requirement to review the environmental monitoring program at least annually and whenever there are changes or issues such as product failures, such as products with positive tests, or consistently negative results. Onto waste and waste disposal. Waste disposal should be managed in accordance with legal requirements and to prevent accumulation, risk of contamination, and the attraction of pests. Management of surplus food and products for animal feed. Effective processes shall be in place to ensure the safety and legality of byproducts of the primary processing activity of the site. There are requirements for surplus customer-branded products, staff shops and donations to charity, and food for animal feed. The whole site shall have an effective prevention pest management program in place to minimize the risk of infestation, and resources shall be available to respond rapidly to any issues which occur to prevent risk to products. Pest management programs shall comply with applicable legislation. Legislation governing the use of pest control products should be understood and complied with. The frequency of inspections shall be determined by risk assessment and shall be documented. As a new requirement, the site shall have adequate measures in place to prevent birds from entering buildings or roosting above loading or unloading areas. Storage. All storage facilities should be suitable for purpose. Documented procedures to maintain product safety and quality during storage shall be developed on the basis of risk assessment. There are requirements for documented storage procedures, storage of packaging, temperature control, storage in a controlled atmosphere, storage outside, and stock rotation. Dispatch and transport. Procedures shall be in place to ensure that the management of dispatch and of the vehicles and containers used for transporting products from the site do not represent a risk to safety, security, or quality of the products. There are requirements for dispatch and transport procedures, vehicle inspection, vehicle temperature control, vehicle maintenance and hygiene, transport procedures, and third-party contractors. All vehicles or containers used for the transport of raw materials and the dispatch of products shall be fit for purpose. So on to Section 5, Product Control, which includes design and development, labeling, management of allergens, product authenticity, packaging, product inspection, product release, and pet food. Product design and development. Product design and development procedures shall be in place for new products or processes and any changes to ensure that safe and legal products are produced. There are requirements for new product development, approval of HACCP for new products, factory trials, shelf life evaluation. Product labeling. Product labeling shall comply with the appropriate legal requirements and contain information to enable the safe handling, display, storage and preparation of the product. There are requirements for the legality of labels, label review, nutritional claims, third-party label design, and cooking instructions. This is one of the best labels I've come across. But seriously, there is a new clause for cooking instructions to be validated. Where cooking instructions are provided to ensure product safety, they shall be fully validated to ensure that, when the product is cooked according to the instructions, a safe, ready-to-eat product is consistently produced. Management of allergens, a fundamental requirement. A system must be in place for the management of allergenic materials, which minimizes the risk of allergen contamination of products and meets legal requirements for labeling in the country of sale. The site shall carry out an assessment of raw materials to establish the presence and likelihood of contamination by allergens. There are requirements for raw material assessment, list of allergenic materials, risk assessment for cross-contamination, cross-contamination procedures, control of rework, on-pack warning labels, allergen claims, and allergen cleaning regimes. 5.4 covers product authenticity, claims, and chain of custody. Systems should be in place to minimize the risk of purchasing fraudulent or adulterated raw materials, ensure that all the product descriptions are claims are legal, accurate, and verified. Processes should be in place to access information on historical and developing threats to the supply chain, which may present a risk of adulteration or substitution of raw materials. A documented vulnerability assessment should be carried out for all raw materials to assess the potential risk of adulteration or substitution. Where raw materials are identified as being at a particular risk, appropriate assurance and/or testing processes shall be in place to reduce the risk. The output of the vulnerability assessment shall be a documented vulnerability assessment plan. Packaging. Packaging should be fit for purpose, stored under conditions to prevent contamination, and comply with relevant food safety legislation. When purchasing or specifying food contact packaging, the supplier of the packaging material should be made aware of any particular characteristics of the food which may affect packaging suitability. For example, high fat content, high or low pH, or usage such as microwaving. Reference to food contact has been removed and replaced with a reference to primary packaging. There are numerous examples of migration from packaging other than food contact, such as from inks used on external labels. Problems with obsolete packaging. Accountants are one of the biggest hazards when it comes to controlling obsolete packaging. Despite it being obsolete, this packaging has value on the books and they don't want it to disappear. Of course, these issues are not just with obsolete packaging, it applies to obsolete ingredients, etc. The company should have a procedure to manage obsolete packaging. Product inspection and laboratory testing. The company shall undertake or subcontract inspection and analyses which are critical to confirm product safety, legality, integrity, and quality using appropriate procedures, facilities, and standards. The significance of laboratory results shall be understood and acted upon accordingly. Appropriate action shall be taken. Products should be released by authorized personnel only when all agreed release procedures have been completed. 5.8 is a new section on pet food. On to Section 6, Process Control. There's a fundamental requirement. The site shall operate to documented procedures and/or work instructions that ensure the production of a consistently safe and legal product with the desired quality characteristics in full compliance with the HACCP Food Safety Plan. Equipment settings. Where settings are critical to the safety or quality or legality of the products, changes to the equipment setting shall only be completed by trained and authorized staff. Labeling and pack control. Fundamental requirement. The management controls of product labeling activities shall ensure that products will be correctly labeled and coded. This is an example of a label checking and retention record. The label is cross-checked by operators in real time, checked by the supervisor hourly, and checked by the production manager at the end of the shift. Here's my slide from Food Safety Live in 2013, At the time, greater than 60% of recalls were related to allergen labelling. A common theme in the past month is that still over 60% of the recalls are due to undeclared allergen on the label. This is usually a result of errors made in the original label, subsequent changes to ingredients or suppliers, or incorrect or obsolete label applied during the packing process. There are extensive requirements that contribute to packing and label control in the BRC standard. Changes include changes in raw materials communicated to goods receipt personnel, manage obsolete packaging, control of offline coding and printed, good practices for online verification, and training on label and packing processes. There should be a quality control system which conforms to legal requirements in the country where the product is sold, and any additional industry sector codes or specified customer requirements. Where used, the site shall establish procedures for the operation and testing of online check players. Calibration. There is a need to demonstrate that measuring equipment is sufficiently accurate and reliable to provide confidence in measured results. On to Section 7, Personnel. Training is a fundamental requirement. The company shall ensure that all personnel performing work that affects product safety, legality, and quality are demonstrably competent to carry out their activity. There are specific requirements, including the requirement for allergen training and training on the site's labelling and packing processes, the requirement for training records, and a competency review. Personal hygiene standards shall be developed to minimize the risk of product contamination from personnel, be appropriate to the products produced, and adapted by all personnel. Medical screening. There are specific requirements for illness notification and a documented infectious disease procedure. Protective clothing. Site-issued protective clothing shall be worn by employees, contractors, or visitors working in or entering production areas. So a high-risk, high care and ambient high care requirements have been moved to Section 8. There are some additions, like the control of equipment, removal and return, and control of portable equipment that moves between risk areas, waste and waste disposal, and protective clothing, particularly segregation of clothes between high-risk, high-care and low-risk areas. Section 9 covers requirements for traded products. These are some useful links which we'll post on the webinar webpage after the webinar, so you can get those. Obviously, BRC, Global Standard for Food Safety Resources, include help and guidance, BRC Participate, and training. And there are other food safety webinars that you might find useful, and again, we'll post those links after the on the webpage after the webinar. So, we're on to any questions.
Okay, Tony, yeah, thank you very much for that. Obviously, yeah, can you switch your webcam on, Tony? There is a lot of detail obviously, and we've only got an hour, so trying to cover every minute detail is
Yes,
impossible.
I'm
So,
sorry about that. It took me longer to get through it than I thought it would.
no, that's fine. In this hour, we can only expect a higher level overview of the changes. Some people in the sidebar were saying, I can't read what it says on the documents, but if we were to go through all of the documents, then we'd be here for several hours. So,
Well,
and also a number of people were asking where those documents, the ABC templates were from.
right.
So, I've put it in the sidebar. Do you want to, before we get into the questions, do you want to explain where those templates and documents are from?
Well, all the documents and risk assessments that will be displayed in the presentation are from BRC Food Safety and Quality Implementation Package. There's over 100 food safety management system procedures. There's record templates. There's an additional HACCP manual and training instructions. There's additional modules, including supplier approval, allergen management, product development, a laboratory manual, other training presentations such as internal auditor. There's an implementation workbook and a user guide. So anyone that's interested, I would suggest go to the web page and have a look at the product brochure, and there's some samples there.
Yeah. Okay. And you missed one thing, that when people purchase that, they do get your guidance during the implementation.
Yeah, we offer technical support until you've got achieved certification. I mean, it's not a full-time technical support. I'm not going to rewrite all the procedures for you, but I'm there to help and advise if you've got any questions, certainly. And sometimes we do use Skype as well if anybody's struggling with that, but yes.
Okay, let's pick up on some questions then, Tony, if you will. Right, I'm just going to pick one at random here. Irina, what is the reference of the air sampling limits mentioned for the packaging materials? That's quite a specific one.
Okay, well, if your packaging material is going to a product, let's say, for example, a milkshake or a yogurt shake, and that product is particularly susceptible to yeast and molds. So your supplier may want a specific maximum limit for yeast and molds in your bottles, or they might want to look at what you're packing them into. For example, I used to have somebody that packed them in cardboard boxes, which are full of yeast and molds. So that's a bad idea in the first place. It's much better to be enclosed, sealed, and shrink wrapped, stretch wrapped, whatever.
Okay. Right. Next one, Lupita. For BRC, what is the difference among correction and corrective action and preventive action?
Okay. Corrections are something you do straight away to remedy a situation. Corrective action is what you usually do to prevent a reoccurrence of something that's happened, and preventive action is to prevent an occurrence of something that's never happened normally.
Okay, so for example, if something got contaminated, you'd correction would be to throw away, isolate, and
well, let's say you're running a plant and it drops low in temperature. Your immediate correction would be to stop processing, to clean the plant and start again. Your corrective action would be to use your 5 whys, the root cause analysis, to find out why it dropped in temperature in the first place. Was it a faulty steam valve? And then prevention might be looking at maintenance on that plant to ensure that steam valve is regularly serviced so that it doesn't happen. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. Perfect. Let's have a look. Hamid, in the risk assessment, is it important to write the name of all microbes or just write microbial count?
You might. It depends on your products because or raw materials, but you might have specific organisms that your product is susceptible. So salmonella in chocolate, listeria in dairy. It depends what you need to look at your product and the raw materials that you're using and what controls you've got in the process to actually eliminate those hazards.
Okay, okay, Tony. There are a couple of questions related to food safety culture, which is a new element, and how to go about that.
Right.
So, any comments on
Well, I think
developing?
first of all, food safety culture needs to start with senior management. And then they need to dictate the standards that they want to apply, but also talk to people about what the issues are on the shop floor, allow feedback, reward people that actually proactively enhance the culture. So reward schemes or employee of the month, food safety employee of the month, communicating with people, telling them about audit results, sharing complaints, but not just complaints, but complaint trends, complaint analysis, so they can see if and be rewarded if things are getting better or made aware if things are getting worse.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Communication, that's absolutely key into it, and being visual and involving them in problems and solutions as well. And yeah, okay. Let's have a look. Agneeth, would it be correct to claim that if you do not identify any CCPs in your process, you would not have the need or basis to create a HACCP plan?
Well, they call it a food safety plan, but what the BRC does say, if your hazard is controlled by a prerequisite, there is some requirements in there for validation. So, I mean, it's quite possible not to have CCPs, but something. Let's say if you're running an allergenic product and then a product without that allergen, and you're cleaning in between, and that cleaning procedure is important to prevent contamination of the next product, then the cleaning is something that needs to be validated.
Okay.
Yeah, even though it's prerequisite program by your analysis.
Okay, Mukesh, how can we make a strong confidential reporting system?
I think it depends on the size of your organization and the extent of your human resources department. Is there somebody, is the organization large enough to have the resource to have somebody in HR to manage that process and take the calls or letters or whatever, or do you need additional external resource and sort of contract part of it out to actually help you manage that process? So it will vary from organization to organization.
But you need a line to senior management.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Any more? There were lots of questions throughout, but they've disappeared way down. Okay. Can you see any more?
I mean, if people do have questions, will there be a forum or a topic where they can post on the website?
Yeah, all of these comments get posted on the topic on the website, on the forum,
Right.
and we can follow up there afterwards. Yeah.
Fine. Okay. Yeah, we'll try and do that then if there's lots that we've missed.
How often do you recommend personal trainings carried out?
Depends on the person, but I mean, there should be at least a minimum, an annual review of the training competencies. So minimum annually. It depends on the criticality of the criticality of the role that a person has within the organisation, and also the performance. If you've got problems with somebody performance-wise, then you may need to revisit the training sooner.
Or also, I suppose, if you're getting if you're reviewing findings of audits, external, internal, internal and complaints and customer complaints, that can target training. Claire, what is the best strategy for environmental monitoring?
Well, there were a number of slides in that presentation where you saw where there were various contact and non-contact food areas, areas on equipment and in production facilities. So it's identifying key food contact surfaces, but also other areas where there might be contamination, which could eventually get in onto the product contact surfaces and into the product. So it's sort of starting from the highest risk outwards and monitoring obviously the highest risk first, but also the entire environment, including walls, floors, drains, to make sure that there isn't contamination there with pathogens particularly that are likely to contaminate or be a risk of contaminating the product.
Okay. Syed, are you aware of a GFSI model for food safety culture, Tony? And if you are, and does it meet the BRC requirements?
GFSI model
for food safety culture, is there one?
I'm not sure.
Right. Okay. Right. Maxine is asking, is BRC now closer to the requirements of FSMA?
Yes, much closer.
Yeah.
And in fact, they've got an additional voluntary module specific for that purpose. And okay. Actually, we do a BRC and FSMA implementation package as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would validation be required for a confidential reporting system?
No, I don't think so.
Frequency of training for the HACCP team members, internal, and would it be internal or external?
For team leader, I would say it should be really a 2-day classroom based, as I mentioned before. For the other team members, it can be internal or external, but it doesn't need to be as extensive.
Do you know anything? Narangi Chai is asking, heard that Codex HACCP will be revised, revision 5, 2019 or 2020. Are you aware of that, Tony?
I think they were looking at revising it for a while, but I haven't seen anything new yet.
Okay, keep your eyes peeled. Right, okay, we passed the time, so I'm conscious about that. We have put the certificate in the sidebar. We will follow up with an email with links to everything we've discussed, and you can post your question on the forum, and Tony will keep his eye on that and follow up on that. But yeah, thanks very much, Tony. Fantastic overview. I'm sure when people watch the video back with the presentation, they'll get a huge amount out of it. And for anybody who's new to implementing BRC straight off into 8 or transitioning from 7 to 8, they'll find it very useful. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you, everybody.
Great. All right. Yep, ladies and gents, I've loaded the certificate in the sidebar. I will follow up in an hour or so with the recording, the slides and the certificate. We have got a Food Safety Fridays next week, and I'll be sending an email about that. So I hope you've enjoyed today and you've got something out of it. It is only 1 hour. It's not easy to get into so much, but it's meant to be an overview. Further thinking, stimulate some ideas and help you on your track transition to 8, BRC issue 8. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.